It seems like you are putting a lot of weight on the communication between the teacher and the student, that there is something happening there.
Yes.
Rather than the teacher being perfect and then pouring their wisdom into.
Very good. Very good. It isn't that you go to a teacher and they pour all their bounty into you and you just say, thank you, big teacher, I'm so little. The same with the trainee, and the trainer. The trainee does not have nothing and the trainer does not have everything. It's a communication between two organisms. And the teacher is a guide, a support. It's almost like holding your hand when you go through the fire, when you evolve and develop. And the teacher isn't saying, I've got it and you haven't. The teacher is saying, you're okay, because I'm okay. And by me affirming that you are really okay, and that you don't have to try and push and strive and effort, that may be the magic ingredient. And let's really look at this. Let's really look at this. What was Alexander's, one of his greatest discoveries is the universality of end gaining, of striving for results. So if that is true, and I haven't come across too many Alexander teachers that don't accept the principle of the toxicity of end gaining, the problematics of end gaining. If that is one of the major problematics, then the solution isn't to use that same trying mind to send messages or to berate yourself for not being good enough and try harder to be even better. It's to cultivate and soften the end gaining mind, to prevent it from being overly dominating all the time. And when you soften the end gaining mind, the striving, efforting, pushing mind, you have the allowing mind, the quieter mind, the accepting, non-judging mind. And who knows, maybe that is what frees up next. Maybe that is what the magic ingredient of what we're doing. Rather than thinking about some ideal postural shape that we have to impose on ourselves with these rather efforting directions. Maybe we've missed the point a little bit. And when we stop the overly trying mind, the right thing will do itself and we can recalibrate.
So you see end gaining as a frame of mind rather than doing something.
I see end gaining as a universal attribute that one day you will never wake up without end gaining as part of the personality, that we have a tendency of striving and efforting after results, after goals. Mm-hmm. The idea isn't to not have goals. That's bonkers. Mm-hmm. Alexander wasn't interested in saying, don't have ambitions, don't have goals, don't have strategies, don't have plans. He was interested in the way that we achieve them, that can actually interfere with the arrival at the destination. So what do we mean by end gaining? End gaining is when something happens. Say, for instance, I want to give a good after dinner speech and I want to be very impressive. And I puff my chest out and I effort myself and I really try and speak to the audience with my bigness and my effort and my passion. Number one, I'll probably freeze up in my throat. Number two, I'll probably give myself a neck ache and a stiff shoulder. And number three, it'll interfere with the quality of my delivery. So the Alexander technique says, end gaining is there, but can it be held? Can it be neutralized? Can it be held back from dominance? in Alexander words, we'd say, can it be inhibited? Can it be embraced, not squashed or surgically removed? Can we develop a way of being with the demand to enthuse and to perform without disturbing ourselves? Can we hold on to the possibility that the mind doesn't have to go off into an adrenal response, into flight fight, into drama, into speed? Can we learn to stay back and to be kind to ourselves and have something in reserve? Can we remain okay within our flesh, to remain embodied, to remain with our feet on the ground, when everything around us is conspiring to throw us off our center? That's the essence of the Alexander world. That's the real essence of the work. What capacity we can evolve at these critical moments when life usually throws us out of balance. Can we approach these same events with more equanimity, with more balance, with more poise, with more kindness to ourselves? That's the whole point about the end gaining principle. Not that it vanishes, but there's a balancing counterpart where it doesn't have to be overly one-sided. There's other aspects of the personality that can evolve, and stillness and non-reaction, the nervous system staying in tune. Alexander called it in touch with reason, where the brain isn't frazzled, where we can still think clearly, where the body is not in a state of fight and flight and distress, where the body can remain open and freer. That's the principle of the Alexander work.
Is this something that can be measured? How do you know if someone is good enough at this?
That's a great question. So, because we're mind-body units, because there is psychophysical unity, rather than we need to achieve psychophysical unity, which I sometimes hear about, we are psychophysical organisms.
Mm.
If that's true, and I very much go along with Alexander's vision of his work, which is that we are psychophysical organisms and always will be, and that you cannot separate the mind from the body. If it's true, then the mind reflects the body and the body reflects the mind. What do I mean by that? It means that if I am end gaining and overly chomping at the bit, like a headless chicken, it is manifest within my body, and you can observe it. So how would you observe if I'm end gaining and disturbing myself in this conversation? Well, there's a number of things you'll be able to observe. Alexander observed them in mirrors. He observed that the neck was getting rather rigid, that the head was creeping back and down into the spine, that he was lifting up his chest, constricting his breath. His back was shortening and narrowing. So on a postural side, it's quite visible if I'm in a state of reactivity. That's quite clear. That's quite clear.
Mm.
The misunderstanding is that I actually have to somehow change the body in order to work through that problem.
Yeah.
That's another question. But it's visible. You know, there is a barometer. What else is a barometer if I'm not able to stay back within myself and I get overly reactive and disturbed? Well, another barometer would be the voice. And you know that very well. The voice would give evidence of my disturbance. And we know that when we're in the company of someone who's rather upset and distressed.
Mm.
We'll hear the tone of voice demonstrating that something within the soul is not okay. Clear?
Mm-hmm.
What else is evidence about whether I'm in a good zone or not? Another evidence would be movement, the quality of my movement. If I'm a rather clumsy dancer and I'm frightened of being able to remember my moves, you'll see a rather awkward, jerky dancer. I will move and sit and stand with jolts and pushes and pulls and efforts, lack of grace. There may be other barometers as well that you can sense about a person's being. Sometimes you walk into a room and there's a funny atmosphere. There may be something in the air. There may be something in the electromagnetic field around a human being when they're in an okay state and not such an okay state. So because of psychophysical unity, there is evidence of when you're performing at your best and not quite performing at your best. And just to emphasize, no Alexander teacher performs at their best all the time.
Mm-hmm.
No Alexander teacher performs at their best all the time, but hopefully during an Alexander lesson that they're giving, they're more at their best than at their worst, which means they can give an okay lesson.
So do you think there is something in the process of looking after yourself that is actually transmitting to the pupils? So it's like you're showing a model to your students of how you look after yourself, and then they copy that procedure of looking after themselves.
Yes, there's concepts, isn't there, in neuropsychology of mirroring, isn't there?
Mm.
Neural mirroring. There's a concept where we do unconsciously find ourselves imitating those around us, that children seem to pick up on the attitude, the dominant attitude of the parents. So in a way, if you're at your best, or certainly better than average within yourself, that you're reasonably okay and poised and staying back and not getting overly involved in the dramas of the moment, somehow the pupil will pick up on some of that, move towards it, be influenced by that. I mean, this isn't very complicated stuff. If you're very agitated and you have a nice cup of tea with a kindly aunt or uncle or friend, you'll feel better because they're in an okay state. It's not strange that we do pick up on other people's states. People are infectious, both for good and for ill. And the Alexander technique teacher has an obligation to infect the pupil in a healthy direction and not an unhealthy direction. So if I'm in the middle of a temper tantrum with my pupils because they don't understand the Alexander technique,
Mm-hmm.
then that's not me being an Alexander teacher, because I'm not modeling anything of any value. Quite the opposite. I'm actually just pushing all their buttons. And even though they may understand that I'm in a bit of a temper because they haven't got it right, I'm actually giving them an anti-Alexander lesson. I'm just promoting and reinforcing their reactions and their self-diminishings. They're feeling bad about themselves, their reactivity. So yes, we are there to somehow model a different way of coping with the same stimuli that put them wrong.
Mm-hmm. And there is some kind of teaching element to it, because it's not enough just to be a calm person and meditate all day long.
Not at all. The whole approach of the Alexander work isn't just to sit cross-legged and meditate in some blissful oneness. Quite the opposite. This is what John Dewey called thinking in activity. In other words, the Alexander teacher has to embody the reality that you can look after yourself and play the violin in an audition that's rather stressful, that you can talk about politics without losing your cool, that you can run a race or hit match point in tennis and keep your freedom and grace rather than snatch at the critical moment and lose the point. This is something about inactivity, not just I'll sit blissfully,
Mm-hmm.
cross-legged and say Om. Can we go through the acts of daily living. We start off with maybe simpler ones like sitting and standing and walking. But it's even deeper than that, much deeper. Can I be available to my own thoughts and feelings and be free? Can the teacher allow me to sit with myself in a way that I haven't been able to sit with myself before? Because I'm always distracting myself with my habits of busyness and food or alcohol or drugs or danger or distractions like television and iPads and iPhones. Can I actually be with myself and commune with myself? Have time for me and the internal messages that are coming up and talking to me, myself, about my life and my experiences? Can I hold those? And with the help of a teacher that can help me and my nervous system remain open to my own inner explorations of who I am, the know thyself. That's the purpose of an Alexander lesson. Not just to have this idealized version of some meditative bliss, but to be able to have a certain quality of stillness and non-reaction and engage both in my own internal dialogue and engage in the fullness of the world. The internal stimuli and the external stimuli, as Alexander put it.
So now you're talking about managing with the help of a teacher, but what about the teachers themselves?
Well, in a way, if you are going to set yourself up and say that you're a teacher, then you have to be able to deliver the goods that mean you want to be able to be with the pupil while they're going through their stimuli. If the teacher is getting all frantic and frozen and terrified and fixed when the pupil is sitting and standing and moving and talking about their struggles at work, then there's no modeling, there's no evolution, there's no new experience. So the teacher does have to be able to supply a different experience to the norm, a different experience to the hugely habitual pattern that pupils bringing through the door. And so in order for the teacher to be able to hold the space for the pupil to have a different experience, the teacher has to have evolved within themselves sufficient, again, not perfect, but sufficient capacities for what we call inhibition, non-reaction, for their own internal stimuli, in order to be present and available to deliver that communication to the pupil in this interaction. It's not that the pupil's got nothing and the teacher's got everything. It's like working together, but the teacher will be maybe just a little bit further evolved in terms of playing the game. They've explored it a little bit further. They've developed capacities for a longer period of time. And so the pupil can piggyback on the teacher's use of self. And then it's repeated and explored and repeated and explored over many, many sessions. And the pupil develops this capacity within themselves. The pupil develops this capacity deep within themselves as a result of this constant communication from teacher to pupil, this interaction, this organic interaction. Something evolves within the pupil.
Mm-hmm. And you said that something arose in yourself when you are teaching, that you're still learning.
Forever.
Yeah.
And sometimes there will be places I won't be able to go.
Uh-huh.
There's some traumas I won't be able to fully embrace and sit with. Maybe there'll be a certain darker side of myself I won't be able to go to. That there'll be some unfinished business. That there'll be some buttons that will be pushed within myself that I won't be able to prevent myself reacting to in a habitual pattern of distraction and distortion. Of course, there will be. There's always unfinished business. You know, we are all broken. We are all human, and there's no such thing as a perfected soul. And so the teacher is while they're working, also becoming more embodied, more able to sit with themselves, but to a limit. And we have our limits.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own limits based on our own struggles, our own traumas, our own histories. And often we've been drawn to Alexander because we want to heal, but the idea of total healing is a myth. But the fact that we're actually engaged in a process of being more open to ourselves, of doing the heart surgery, means that we'll be able to be there with another person who is exploring a similar manifestation of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the parallel is the deeper you go in terms of your own ability to not react to your own internal stimuli and external stimuli, the more you'll be able to hold the hand of your pupil while they're going through their process. So it's a relational event. It's a togetherness event. It's an event of, I'm with you while you're coping with everyday life events. I'm with you while you're talking or feeling or thinking. I'm with you while you're moving. I keep my hands on you while you're performing, reciting, singing, playing the piano. I'm with you while I help you not react in a way that you used to react without the support of my own psychophysical condition.
Is that also because if I'm helping a violinist with an audition, I know that I'm not going to that audition, so I can be more calm. And then I can support them from there.
You can't support them in the audition.
I wouldn't, if I would have to be do an audition and at the same time support somebody else, it wouldn't be so easy.
That's right. So when they're terrified and coming to you, and they always get stage fright, and whenever they have an audition, they break down and freeze, and they come to you, what you're doing with them in the artificial event that we call an Alexander lesson is to take them through a whole series of procedures and artificial events where they build up within themselves, through your condition of support, the inhibition of reaction, that you're supporting them be more able to face the monster of fear of failure and desire to succeed, that you're more able to help them sit with the reality of, they're going to hate me at the audition, I'm going to fail miserably, and I'm terrified of being rejected. Those internal thoughts and feelings in an Alexander lesson will come up because they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to fail with you. The same feelings come up in a lesson, but maybe not quite so high. But something develops. There's a germ that starts to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Seed that starts to develop and grow. And as a result of repetition and the constancy of the experience in lessons, this seed evolves so that they are more able. It's not a decision when the audition happens, it's too late. But the work they do with you will have helped them evolve the seed so that when the audition happens, they're more able to tolerate the terrors of rejection, the terrors of getting it wrong, the terrors of failure, of being caught out, the terrors of the audition, because those aspects of their soul are also present in an Alexander lesson with you, and they experience a different reaction. That it's okay, that they can have feelings. So this Alexander thing isn't about taking away the fear of the audition, the stage fright. Quite the opposite. People that think Alexander's about taking away, surgically removing toxic stimuli have misunderstood the game.
Yeah.
The Alexander game is to be able to sit with the fear, the sadness, the distress, the hopes, the dreams, the disappointments, and to be able to embrace all of those without what we usually do with those things, which is avoid and pull and push and freeze and distract and jump out of our skins, but to sit with. How do they learn to sit with you? Because you're embodying the sit with. You're embodying, I'm okay. You're embodying, your fears are okay. Your anxieties are quite normal. Stage fright is part of the show. And they develop an ability to accept, embrace, rather than judge and diminish and reject through your sessions repeatedly. And that cultivates something that embodies deeper and deeper over time. So that when the audition happens, they have developed and cultivated something deep within themselves that is available in that moment. It may throw them for the next few months or years. They may always have an element that throws them off key. Maybe not for half an hour, but maybe just for a few seconds or minutes. And their recovery will be quicker as a result of the work they've done with you. You don't need to be overly perfectionist about this. Any support in that direction is a benefit. You don't want to be overly idealistic about, I'm going to get rid of your stage fright and your terror. No, that's not your job. Your job is to help them sit with and be with their terror and fright, literally, to such a great extent.
Thank you for allowing me to interview you. And I think this will be very helpful for Alexander teachers and students who want to go a little bit deeper into learning the technique.
Thanks for inviting me, Ina. And we'll do another one sometime.
Yes. Let's do another one.
All the best. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.